he had an epiphany, a moment of awe when he came and saw the world as looking like a ball, just like that, as he's coming back. And I'm so glad that he talked about this epiphany, this moment of awe that he had as he looked at it. And it helps me to really see it as I think about what Dr. King said, that we will learn to live together on this planet, or we will perish together as fools. And so I thought, okay, can we get across those? We can get anywhere these days. We can talk to anybody in any of those places these days. And we better learn how to relate and not see parts of those people, those areas, as an axis of evil, as we heard in some past times. And so I hope we will be conscious of the fact that that's what, if we make our future, we ought to make it with this vision that we are all going to need right now to learn to live on that globe together. And so I say thank you to Edgar Mitchell, because he helped me every time I listened to his story and what happened with him as he saw it, that transformation, that we too will have an epiphany as we more and more become conscious of the fact that we live on that land together. So let's see what I've said here that I had written. I hope that we can realize that most of the people who have made great contributions are folk just like us, and that we can see it as a journey on which we have been. The movement for change. We can keep going back and back and back in history, and we can talk about a lot of things that happened, a lot of transformative actions, that occurred. But if it's a journey, we can see this. I think of it. Maybe this is the fourth part of the journey. We can go back in terms of Black people's experience in this country as illicit slavery, and then we had an attempt at emancipation, and then we had a real segregated society, and then as I think that this is a fourth period, as I try to break it down as a journey, a fourth period time frame, because the changes wrought, are a part of or flow from what happened in the earlier part of the journey. And it'll be 50, 60 years from now, it's going to be different. We probably wouldn't even recognize it. I think it's a continuing journey that we will evolve. And maybe we can indeed, maybe we will be able to say, yes, Dr. King, we did realize that we have to learn to live together on this planet or perish together. It's an incredible journey, and the part to which we are called now, as I said, is phase 4. I like to see this time as a wonderful opportunity to erase the tapes that would have us believe that we're the only pebble on the beach, as we used to say to our schoolmates who thought he or she was better than anyone else. I think as a country, we have assumed such a posture sometimes a bit too often. So thank you, Mr. Edgar Mitchell, for the epiphany that you had. It helps me to realize what this world looks like, as I have said, to be conscious of the other parts of it, to realize that we can never again effectively see ourselves as living in isolation to solve most of the problems we face. We must relate to each other, and whether we want to or not. We must learn to respect each part of this beautiful planet. Can we live in isolation? I say no. We are inextricably bound to each other. With easy access to air travel, advancing technology which allows us to speak to each other across oceans, to be with people in other countries in what seems like a flash, we best realize that we might better use our energy and resources to be like a big sister, big brother, wanting to get at the root of dissension and the anger that we see, getting at the root cause of some of the horrendous activities and hostility would serve the planet well. I want to move towards closure with looking at some lessons that I think we learned as I think about looking at the struggle, the civil rights struggle, the struggle to advance democracy in the country. I made a list of the lessons, and you may agree, maybe you won't, but I think that we learned that we can make the road by walking it. You've heard that before. We didn't know everything up front. There was no blueprint, but we felt we too had an epiphany, and maybe you have in some areas of your life. The more we got involved, the more we acted, the more we came together, the stronger we felt. We realized a new definition of power. And I'm so tired of every time I turn on the tube that so much is about war. And so the culture, the atmosphere is just permeated with a celebration of wars, and that we could spend a lot of time looking at why we have such a focus on war, and why is violence a way of centerpiece of entertainment. But we learned that we had a different kind of power, and that it was important to understand. I'm talking about what we learned so beautifully from Mahatma Gandhi and other people as well. But I like his Satyagraha, soul force, and coming to understand what that really meant. We learned that we could change things, no matter how deeply entrenched a pattern or structure, that change is possible. That we could use our anger and our upset to empower ourselves to act for change, to confront the powers that be from an understanding of nonviolence. As I just said, Satyagraha, as Mahatma Gandhi coined it. We were strengthened by allowing this fascinating philosophy of nonviolence to permeate our very being, having it become the modus operandi from which we would struggle. Except one guy that worked with us, Jose Williams. I remember we got on the plane shortly after the Civil Rights Bill, and the attendant on the plane really was rather rude and crude. And of course we were sort of on the heels of that great movement. And I remember Jose, one of our best organizers, but he looked at the woman on the plane and said, "Now I'm not one of those nonviolent Negroes." And I'm not sure. Well, seriously, it's fascinating to learn. I like reading Fisher, is the last name of the biography of Mahatma Gandhi, and how he just was so infused in his very being, his understanding of this new power. We learned that whatever skills we lacked, we could learn. We could acquire these skills, whether it was how to run an effective meeting, because when the folk left these workshops, they were instructed to go back home, motivated, go back home and start your own little citizenship educational workshops. We're not talking about new people who come to the country. We're talking about people right here who don't see themselves as citizens and all that that implies. And we talked about that. We learned that we could act from our capacities, not from some deficit attributed to us by others. We would define who we were. I said whatever skills we lack, we could learn all those skills. We learned that we have government by the people, but only if we make it so. Only if we, the people, give life to those words. We learned that we are not alone, that if we take some steps to bring about positive social change, we'll find allies in many quarters, and others will join us. And like James, I don't know if you ever heard of the James the Meredith March. We were sitting in a staff meeting, an executive staff meeting at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference offices, when our phone rang, and somebody said that, you know, James Meredith said he was going to have a march against fear in Mississippi. And so, is he crazy? Somebody asked. And he struck out by himself, walking across Mississippi, and a march against fear. And it made sense in a way, but you know, he didn't have any great big organization. But when we got the phone call and realized that Meredith had just been shot, we stopped the meeting. And we got ourselves to Mississippi, and other people came, joined us, and we finished the Meredith March. Perhaps, most importantly, a lesson that's important for us is that we learned that when people are serving, life cannot be meaningless, that you can't be bored giving yourself to such work. And I have talked long enough. But I made a list, and I won't go through that list right now, but just looking at people who were transformed in their own thinking and who decided that they were going to work in a way that they indeed would make the kind of future that would create a better world for all of us to live in. In gratitude for this wonderful planet, people decided, yes, I will give myself to something. Something better, something special, something to help make everything better. And yeah, I won't say what they did as I did when I wrote it down. I Rosa Parks, who just kept her seat on the bus. I'm not going to move back. Nelson Mandela did not have this awakening, a renewal in his thinking, in his acceptance of the meaning of that ceremony. The world would be, if he had not had this feeling, is what I want to say, this sense that he wanted to create a non-racial South Africa. If he hadn't done what he did, we would have a different world right now. They could have had a bloodbath when he came out of jail, but he didn't come out with hostility, he came out with his vision. If Martin Luther King Jr. had not really listened to Dr. Mordecai Johnson, shortly after a visit in India, Dr. Mordecai Johnson came back fascinated after the trip to India, because he just was infused by this philosophy of nonviolence, being there learning about Mahatma Gandhi. And I'll mention just two more. I'm fascinated by the Amy Beale story. Amy Beale, a young white woman who went to South Africa, and she was there to study and to help, but she was killed by a bunch of guys at a service station. I was in Cape Town, South Africa, and met Amy Beale's parents. And her parents decided to go there to the community where these boys lived who killed their daughter. And she's working with the very community from which these boys came. I mean, talk about a commitment with her head on straight about what she needed to do. She could just have been bitter and talk about these black African boys, what they did. She's there. There will not be in that community boys who would ever do what they did to Amy. So there's the Amy Beale story, and just a fascinating story. You know, there are just lots of people we could look at who were transformed and who had an epiphany. And Ms. Thompson-Eubanks said, as I said earlier, she said, I feel like I've been born again. And she meant something different than what we meant. My grandfather was, we used to call them holiness preachers. And I guess that means fundamentals, is that what holiness preachers were? But everything was a sin for my grandpa. But it was, but I just realized that when this phrase, I've been born again, it didn't mean what my grandfather said, then a transformation as she understood it in her thinking, in her being. I'm going to stop now, but I want us to really focus on really making the world that we want to live in, and that it is up to us, and that we truly build a new world. I'm going to close with, as I said, we sang about everything, and there's an old song that we used to sing. Where did we sing this? We Climb Jacob's Ladder. Did that come out of our churches? I'm talking to Glenda Walker, the spouse of, I thought we referred to you as the wife. You referred to her. She's Cal's wife. But she has a great voice. But this song, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder, Dr. Vincent Harding wrote some new words to that song. Instead of Climbing Jacob's Ladder, he wrote, We Are Building Up a New World. And that's what I would like us to really focus on and to reaffirm points, ideas, concepts that you've been looking at this week. The old song was, we are climbing Jacob's ladder, and say that 3 times. And then, but when Vince Harding paraphrased, he wrote, we are building up a new world, say that 3 times. I'm going to yell out the words, but I really want you to sing this as, prayerfully. We are building up a new world. We are building up a new world. We are building up a... Builders must be strong. Builders must be... Is that too low? Is that all right? Okay, now, all the folk who didn't sing, think about that. She has a great voice. We are building up a new world.